Good evening and welcome to TV Tuần-san News of the Week. My name is Emma Doe. In what's making headlines this week, an alarming number of Vietnamese children trafficked into Scotland. The Vietnamese government's latest crackdown on dissidents. And 70% of the Vietnamese population found to carry a bacteria which can lead to stomach cancer. In this week's top story, in the latest crackdown against dissidents by Vietnam's government, a court has jailed prominent blogger and former political prisoner Nguyen Van Oai for a further 5 years for violating his probation terms. 36-year-old Oai was arrested in January this year while on probation after a 2013 sentence for activities aimed at overthrowing the government. On Monday, the People's Court in the central province of Nghệ An found him guilty of resisting security personnel in performing their duty. He was given another 4 years on probation as well as the prison sentence. Despite sweeping economic reforms and growing openness to social change, Vietnam's Communist Party retains tight media censorship and does not tolerate criticism. Vietnam's ruling party watchdog has uncovered misconduct by top officials in a central Vietnamese city that will soon host world leaders as part of an Asia-Pacific summit in November. The latest development is part of the communist state's campaign against corruption and follows a number of management scandals in recent months. In a statement on the government's website, the committee chided Nguyen Xuân An, party chief of Da Nang and a member of the party's central committee, for receiving and using cars and houses provided by companies. It also said An was accused of dishonesty, incorrect declarations on qualification certificates, violating party standards and damaging party solidarity. The tourist city of Da Nang will host world leaders, including the US President Donald Trump, China's Xi Jinping, and Russia's Vladimir Putin at the Summit of Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, which begins on November 6. 2 Vietnamese men under death sentences have been arrested by police 6 days after escaping from a prison in the capital of Hanoi. 28-year-old Nguyen Van Tân from Hanoi received the death sentence in April over charges of drug trafficking. He was detained in a jungle in the northern Hoa Binh province on Sunday morning. Several hours earlier, 37-year-old Le Van Tho from northern Hai Giang province was arrested when he was sitting in a taxi. In May, Le was sentenced to death for the charges of drug trafficking, murder and swindling. It's reported that Nguyen and Le broke their shackles and escaped through a hole in the wall of their cell on September 11. They then proceeded to climb a watchtower and used a rope to swing over a 3-metre fence to escape from the T16 detention centre in the rural district of Thanh Oai. A number of staff at the detention centre have been accused of negligence. Medical experts have found that around 70% of the Vietnamese population carry a bacteria which causes stomach ulcers and can also lead to stomach cancer. A leading hospital in Vietnam found that the HP bacteria can be killed with medication that has between an 80 to 90% success rate. But in Vietnam, the success rate for the medication is much lower, sitting between 50 to 60%. That's due to high antibiotic resistance, a major problem in Vietnam where patients often use antibiotics without prescriptions. The HP bacteria is spread a number of ways, through contaminated food or water sources, or from one person to another through mouth to mouth. Over half of the world's population carry HP in their upper gastrointestinal tract, and infection is more common in developing countries. The sister of a Vietnamese migrant worker who was shot and killed by police in Taiwan last month says her brother had made plans to return to his country by the end of the year. News website Focus Taiwan reported that Nguyen Thi Thao told media her 27-year-old brother had no motive to commit crimes in Taiwan. She added that her brother Nguyen Quoc Phi had a stable job, and if everything went as planned, he would have returned to Vietnam by the end of the year. Nguyen, who had reportedly run away from his job, was shot 9 times by a police officer in Hsin County on the morning of August 31st. He was later pronounced dead when he arrived at a hospital. According to local police, Nguyen attacked the police officer and a Taiwanese community watch officer when they tried to stop him from vandalizing and stealing a car. Human rights groups have raised questions about why an unarmed person was shot 9 times and have demanded that the police release the footage from their body cams. The incident is being investigated by prosecutors and the government watchdog body. A group of fishing and boat company owners have been charged by a court in Taiwan for locking up 81 migrant workers to prevent them escaping. 19 people face charges of human trafficking and offences against personal liberty and could receive a maximum 7-year jail sentence if convicted. The fishermen were from countries including Vietnam, Tanzania, Indonesia and the Philippines. The court heard that a number of the men were sometimes made to work for 48 consecutive hours without rest. After a day out at sea, the fishing company owners would lock the workers in tiny windowless rooms to prevent them from leaving their job. The companies in question will be ordered to pay $123,000 in back pay to the workers. Taiwanese employers and recruitment companies have repeatedly come under fire for exploiting migrant workers, the majority of which come from Southeast Asian countries. Police in Edinburgh have reported that Vietnamese children are being trafficked into the Scottish capital in record numbers. In the last 18 months, 16 Vietnamese teenagers have found to be trafficked into the city. The total number of overseas children in state care in the city is now at 33. It's believed the children, mostly from poor and rural areas of Vietnam, are being trafficked to work in cannabis farms and nail bars in the UK. In recent months, police have raided more than 280 nail bars in Edinburgh, London and Cardiff, which resulted in 97 arrests. In September last year, a 44-year-old man named Hong Trung Dang was jailed for trafficking Vietnamese migrants to work at his nail salon in a town outside Edinburgh. A report released last week by the UK's Anti-Slavery Commissioner found that traffickers charge between £10,000 to £33,000 to smuggle workers in from Vietnam to Britain. It also found that rescued children often went missing at high rates, falling into the same cycles of abuse. A Vietnamese stem cell donor who agreed to help save a woman in California from an aggressive form of leukemia has been barred from entering the United States. Helen Huynh was first diagnosed with leukemia in February this year. Doctors believe the best way to treat her is through stem cell therapy, but Huynh's donor, her own sister Thuy, who lives in Vietnam, has been denied entry into the US despite pleading letters from 3 separate hospitals. Finding a donor match for the stem cell therapy is incredibly difficult, but Huynh's sister has a 100% match. Government officials who denied the family's request expressed concern that Huynh's sister would continue to stay in the US at the end of her temporary visa. More than 2,200 Vietnamese nationals are currently studying in New Zealand, placing Vietnam among the top 3 Southeast Asian student populations in the country. The figure was revealed recently at a conference in Ho Chi Minh City on studying abroad. The number of Vietnamese students pursuing bachelor degrees at universities in New Zealand increased 88% in the first 8 months of this year alone. Vietnam has more than 130,000 students studying abroad, according to the latest data from Vietnam's Ministry of Education and Training. Of those, 38,000 or close to 30% study in Japan. Meanwhile, 31,000 students are in Australia, which accounts for 23.8% of all Vietnamese students overseas. Back to news in Australia. Australia has been urged to step in to stop Cambodia from returning a group of 29 Montagnard refugees back to Vietnam. The ethnic minority group are indigenous to the Central Highlands of Vietnam, but will likely face persecution if returned to the state. The 29 refugees were part of a group of 36 Montagnards who sought protection in Cambodia. While 7 were granted protection, 29 had their claims denied. The Asia-Pacific Refugee Rights Network has urged the Australian government to use its influence on the Cambodian government to intervene. Australia currently has an arrangement with Cambodia to resettle refugees from its own offshore detention centres in Manus Island and Nauru to the Southeast Asian country. The Montagnard group's plight is recognised by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which has previously attempted to assist Cambodia to resettle its high number of Montagnard refugees to a third country. That's all from Tuần-san News of the Week. For more stories, you can follow Tuần-san at tvtsonline.com.au and at Facebook at Tuần-san. I'm Emma Doe, thank you so much for watching and I look forward to your company at the same time next week.